The battleships were off about 5 miles off the island, and of course you could hear the ash cans going overhead, you know.
They bombed the place for, depending on who's writing the story, but I've read stories that said they bombed it every day by fighters or bombers or something. No artillery. You couldn't get close enough for artillery, but guns from ships, bombs from airplanes for 130 days before we got there. So it was just blown to smithereens. There wasn't a thing standing anywhere. Not having any knowledge or intelligence about the island, they had no way of knowing that the Japanese had all these miles of tunneled out under the island, or that they had 23,000 Japanese on the island. That intelligence didn't exist.
The bombs and all didn't phase them. They get down there in the tunnels and everything, and you couldn't get at them.
Well, you have to understand that the ground underneath of what you're standing on was nothing but a catacomb of caves. And the Japs were in these caves by the thousands.
In early February, they put out the word that we are going aboard ship. We're going to our next campaign. Nobody knew where. So we loaded aboard ship and went to sea. Once we got to sea, then they told us where we were going. And they brought out a board, and they had outlined the shape of Iwo Jima on there. They told us the name of it. They told us how big it was. It was 2.5 by 5 miles. And most of us couldn't, at least I can only speak for myself, but I couldn't comprehend why we would take such a little place.
You know, Iwo Jima was taken because of the airstrips. And the battle was still going on, and the first airstrip became usable.
On Iwo Jima, you know, the big plus about that island is the B-29s that were bombing Japan. They were coming from Guam and Saipan and Tinian, and Iwo Jima was halfway in between. And a lot of those planes got damage over Japan, anti-aircraft, and they were limping home, and many of them made emergency landings at Iwo Jima.
Now on the 19th of February, we got up, and this was going to be the landing. You know. Now our amphibian tractors carried in Marine. You know, we carried in the 28th Regiment of the 5th Division. The lineup going in, there were 4 lines of amphibian tractors, 10 minutes apart. And the first line was armored amphibians. They had a small cannon on them. And then the next 3 lines were troop-carrying amtracs. I was in the 3rd row back. There were 2 rows ahead of us. Now our instructions were to come in and turn and face Iwo Jima, lower the back ramp and unload the Marines and get out of there, because in 10 minutes there was going to be another bunch coming in, so we had to be out in had to get in and out in 10 minutes.
We went ashore in amphibious tractors. We stood up all the way in because there wasn't a shot fired at us. And they were bombing and strafing the beach area. I mean, really giving it a working over. The battleships were laying out there, firing their 16-inch guns. But the Japanese weren't hurt. They were underground about 50, 60 feet.
Wow.
They didn't care whether you fired at them or not.
When the 4th and 5th Division hit, Kurabashi, the general that was running Iwo Jima, used a different technique or strategy than what they had used in every island up until then. Up until then, every island that we hit, they began firing at us long before we got to the shore.
And Japs were smart. They let the first 2 waves in, you know? And the third wave, that's, nobody could go anywhere. Unless you wanted to swim back to Hawaii, so you were backed up to the Pacific, and if you went up, you were up on an embankment.
He let them come in, not firing at them. Few rounds of artillery, few rounds of mortar, but nothing of any concentration until he got them all ashore. And then, when he got thousands of them on the beach, that's when he opened up with everything he had. And that's why we had so many casualties in the first day on the beach. You couldn't miss. You could throw a rock and hit somebody because they were just thick as fleas.